Good evening, good evening, good evening. I am Tamara L. I am glad to be back. Welcome to another installation of Just Another Messenger, where each episode we're going to dive deep into the past, examining the philosophies, systems, and decisions that continue to influence our world today. Now, by connecting the historical content to the contemporary issues. Now, we aim to spark thought provoking conversation and encourage a deeper understanding of how history impacts our current events today, as well as our culture and social norms, with a little bit of humor along the way. Now, don't forget to hit the subscribe button, share, and like to be a part of the conversation. You wouldn't want to miss it. Let's go ahead and get this thing going. All right. Welcome back. Welcome back. Welcome back. Now, before we get started, let's do this. I would like to thank everyone for your condolences and your prayers as we laid my dad to rest. Now, there's a lot that came out of this recent encounter that occurred. You know, there was just a transformation of in the philosophy of people and the psychology of people. From the repast that I observed that took place, and it helped to shape today's to come back and shape today's episode. Now, as I looked at things, my little wheels are always turning. As I'm seeing the tears flow, the songs were sang, and the eulogy presented, there was a heaviness of heart that took place. As much as we love our loved ones, we desire for them to forever be in this realm, and we know that's not going to occur. But we're going to miss them, so we celebrate them along the way in that last praise report that we're bestowed upon our loved one. And then as we moved over to the repast, there was just a shift that I was able to see. As the people gathered at the repast to break bread, there was just a transformative joy that I saw of Thanksgiving. Which we're going to get into, that's going to help bridge the gap here. I was able to just see that transformative joy occur, and I got to thinking, like, what is it about food? What is it about food that changes us from a collect, even in our resilience, in our trauma, ancestral trauma from enslavement? What is it about food that help us, that creates a connection of unity and resilience? So I wanted to get into that. Now, before we do that, let's just take this time to send out a solitude, a prayer for restoration for those affected in the California wildfires, the storm of Helen, the fires in Brooklyn as well, and all other natural disasters and wars occurring around the world. There's just a lot going on. I mean, as I was sitting there, as I took the time off to see, I was like, wow, there's just so much going on around the world. So let's just take that moment of solitude, of prayer for restoration for those heavily affected by that. In the last episode we left off, we were dealing with collateral consequences, and we went through the journey from the exclusion to the emancipation, uncovering the impact of the Black codes, and also how it echoes in today's modern immigration policies. So go back and look at that last episode and kind of get refreshed on that. Now, in this episode, Breaking Bread with Pain, like I said, I wanted to just analyze the unity and solitude of that, and also go into how, and I found some things along the way. I found some connections, a trauma that occurred then that's still occurring now, that is also related to food injustice. It's like, wow, food injustice. I was very shocked when I started seeing this information as well. Now, what we're going to do, we're going to connect the dots to the collateral consequence through breaking of the bread, and explore the powerful injustice intersection of the food trauma and Black history. Now, from the origins of the soul food during slavery to modern day struggles with food injustice. We're going to dive into how meals symbolize shared pain and strength by celebrating the enduring spirit of a community united by breaking bread together. Now, let's have some housekeeping rules here before we go ahead and get started on this. Let's go ahead and look at some housekeeping rules there. I'm going to go ahead and bring this up. Now, all right. These banners, we're going to show that. All right. Now, please continue to support our channel through Cash App at $ just another messenger. I'm going to leave that scrolling across. I would also like to thank our valuable supporters that we've had throughout this journey as we got started. This is our 10th episode. I'm very excited about that. And the platform is growing. You know, I definitely wanted to make sure this is a very organic growth in this platform. And I know out there you can do so much. You can buy leads and things like that. And that's just not what I wanted to do. I wanted this platform to grow organically based off the information that's being presented, because this platform is not about talking about the lives of people and what they have going on. This platform is, like we said, it's about making that gap and connection regarding how history continued to impact our lives today and how we can start unraveling those things and getting into the weeds for course correction. All right. So I'm going to let that continue to stroll at the bottom of the feed throughout the episode. Now, like I said, continue to subscribe, like, and share on our YouTube page at Just Another Messenger. And keep in mind, follow us on X at jam_404 podcast. That's follow us on X at JAM_404 podcast. And please reach out to us via email at justanothermessengerpodcast@gmail.com. Oh, I definitely got to get a shout out. I was given a merch sweater. It's in a man's version, but I love it because it's so cozy and warm. You know, we're really cold down here in the ATL. You know, these ATLians are cold down here. Well, I just like to stand up and show my little merchandise that was bestowed on me. I think it's great. I love it. You know, my first merchandise shirt I was received on Christmas Day. So it was a lot going on that day. So right now, I'm not sure if that's something I want to get into, merchandise sale. I don't know. So for right now, you know, I just wanted to show, you know, what I received. Happy with that. All right. So let's get this thing started here. Let me bring this up. And let's get started here. Breaking bread with pain. Like I said, I'm going to keep that donate on Cash App at $ at Just Another Messenger. I'm keep that strolling across the bottom. Let's get into this episode of Breaking Bread with Pain here. All right. Now, let's do this. Disclaimer: the views, opinions, and thoughts are the protective expression of Tamara L. for educational and storytelling purposes and does not provide statutory counseling for any United States color or law jurisdictional proceeding. I know I'm back and I'm going to get the rust out. I'm going to get the rust out. All right. Now, like you said, where we left out here, we left off at collateral consequences. The first couple of episodes, we talked about when Joe Biden pardoned his son, Hunter Biden. We talk about the firearm rights, and we talked about the collateral consequences of having a felony and the firearm rights. We dug deep into that, barred from the barrel. All right. So we dealt with the firearm rights. Federal laws prohibits convicted felons from owning or possessing firearms. So go and look at that episode. We talked about the social and cultural stigma. A labeling as a felon can carry lifelong social consequences even after sentences are served. Now, this episode, we're going to talk about housing discrimination. Felons frequently face barriers to securing housing, including restriction in public housing programs. And we're also connecting that with food injustice. So that's why the episode is called Breaking Bread with Pain. All right. Let's get started here. Now, we're always going to talk about the basis of civilization. We're going to always talk about the God principle. All right. We're going to talk about that, how nations as well as states operate according to ecclesiastical principles. That is normally the typical model of apex. The ecclesiastical principles of a society, a nation, a state, what's governmental, whatever is governed, it has an ecclesiastical principle as the apex of its moral compass. So being a Western society, Christianity has been deemed the moral compass for the Western society. And you also, with that, you've had several other different principles of the creators that also has came into the Western diaspora, such as African spirituality and things of that nature. You have Islam, Buddhism, Confucian, Judaism. Sorry. So you have those God principles that are being part of the moral compass. Then you have law, jurisprudence, which is positive law. And you have negative law, which is statute, codes, ordinance, and acts. You have those. Hi, Bridget. You have welcome to Just Another Messenger. Hi, Doretha. Thanks for sharing this event. Thank Greg Green. Thank you. You're welcome. And you have also language. You have etymology, which is the true meaning of words, true science and meaning of words. So we, in every episode, we're always going to talk about the etymology. We're always going to talk about the law of what we're looking at. And then we're also going to always talk about the people. Now, the people is very important because you got to remember we're in a society that's no longer prisoners of war, but the people had not been restored back to its rightful state. So when we're talking about the people, we're talking about their autonomous state, the indigenous state, the native state. Are they immigrants or immigree, refugee, asylum seekers? We have to look at all the aspects of what is the status of the people within that society, because it's different and it varies and it matters. The status of the people matters. All right. Now, let's look here. Let's look at food described according to African spirituality. Let's dive deep into that. Okay, now food in African spirituality, food is seen as a bridge to the ancestors. Now, offerings to the ancestors, food is often used to honor and communicate with ancestors. Offerings such as cooked meals, fruits, or drinks are placed on altars or sacred spaces to invent ancestral blessings and show gratitude. Now, in many African traditions, a small portion of food or drink is poured onto the ground, which is called libations, before eating or drinking as an offering to the ancestor. Now, let's look at these dishes like pounded yam or traditional soups are prepared to align with the ancestral preferences. Now, let's keep in mind that sharing food during ceremonies is believed to strengthen the bond between the living and the spirit world. The act symbolizes unity across the generations and realm. I want to talk on that. I started getting into African spirituality as I started transforming and ascending in different knowledge. I want to say it actually started in 2000 and I want to say 10. I want to say 2010. And it may have been way before that. It could have been, no. Let me go back. It actually started in 2005. However, I still did not look into the fullness of it probably till about 2010 and 11. And so what I've learned along the way is that there has been an indoctrination in this society that has separated the spirit of the man, of the nature of the man or the woman, from the physical body. People tends to think that only occur during death. Keep in mind, there's a breaking away, there's a death that occur every day in your waking and sleeping moment. There's a transformation of death that's occur. Now you can choose to wake up and continue in a space that no longer serves you, or you, when you decide to lay that part of you down, that's what you call the death of a part of you in the spirit, and you transcend into an enlightenment part of yourself for growth. So that's occurred. So then I started getting into making sure that I also had, because, you know, keep in mind that you carry the same bloodline of those that are connected before you. So I thought it was also in the understanding of the teaching to make sure I have a altar present. I have one like soon as you come into my place of where, I mean, I reside within my body, but when you come into a place where I domicile at, and we can get into that, I can get into the weeds of that with you at a later time. But what I wanted to share and press upon you is that where you domicile at, you know, it's very important to have a spiritual practice and for connection to help and lead and guide you. It's very important to have that. So I wanted to talk about that. Now let's look at also food as medicine and spiritual energy. Now the healing property, many African spiritual traditions view food as medicine with inherent spiritual and physical healing powers. For example, palm oil is used in Yoruba spirituality for purification and calming energies. Grains like millet or sorghum are symbolic of life and fertility and are used in both rituals and as sustenance. Sustenance means for nutrition. Now, energy and vibrations, foods are believed to carry spiritual vibrations. Now, me and that word, SPECIFICT, let me tell you one thing about that word. Me and that word don't get along. So if you say Tamara's skipping over words, I'm skipping over that word for a minute because I'm a jack. Look, now I am going to jack that word straight up. So I'm not skipping words. I should have took it out, but I didn't. Let's just say certain, okay? Let's just say that. Now, it carries spiritual vibrations, consuming them, influence an individual energy, emotion, and spiritual state. Sweet foods, for instance, are thought to attract positive energies, whereby bitter foods cleanse and detoxify spiritually. Now, let's look at food as described according to the Heliobiblios, which is called the Bible. All right. Now, food as provision from God. Now, it states it's a divine source. Food is presented as a direct provision from God to sustain life. For example, in Genesis 1:29, I like this directive verse, and I like that for a reason. I'm calling it that for a reason because it's a directive verse of understanding and guidance, and I want to just stay in alignment with what is. You know what I'm saying? I'm feeling flush. All right, so let's look at that now. I like this directive verse of Genesis 1:29. Now, I would say if you still have your Bible, couple this verse, and this just came into my just understanding. Couple Genesis 1:29 with Revelations 22:2, and you're going to see the correlation with the importance of how it is very important and vital that you're given the instructions of your food source. It's in your sustainability, your substance, your nutrition comes from the earth. And that's what I liked about this. In Genesis 1:29, God said, I give you every seed bearing plant on the face of the whole earth, and every tree that has fruit with seed in it, they will be yours for food. It will be yours for food. It says seed bearing. So what is this deal? What is this deal with genetically modified? What is this deal with things that have been altered? There's to see, as a people, we have to get into the governing the mental of things that are not serving us, that changes our molecular vibration to a lower frequency. And that prevents you from vibrating in a manner to be able to do the work. And you say, okay, Tamara, what work are you talking about? Because I people like, I'm good. I got my house, I got my car, I got my children. there's a lot of layers that has to be peeled, burnt, thrown to the side, cast away, and burnt to see and understand these historical contexts that continue to affect us today in today's society. We have to get into the roots and weeds of that. All right. Now, this reflects food as a gift intended for human nourishment. Every seed bearing fruit is for nourishment. It didn't say anything about anything that does not produce seed is okay. It said every seed bearing plant on the face of the whole earth and every tree that has fruit with seed in it will be yours for food. That's what it say. I didn't write this. It's a food as a symbol of fellowship. It's a sharing meals is a symbol of fellowship and unity. For example, in the New Testament, Yeshua often shares meals with his disciple and others, using food to build community and teach spiritual lessons, such as the Last Supper, which was a symbolism of breaking bread, unity, communion, resilience. We are going through a painful moment. There was a painful moment that was taking place and going forward. So let's sit down and break bread and come to an understanding of unity. Early Christians continued this tradition, gathering to break bread in communal worship. Breaking bread is a very vital part of the sustainability of a society. It's a very vital part in that. And let's get all into how it's very vital. Now, let's look at the etymology of food. And I say we're going to always talk about the true meaning of the word. And somebody said, well, this said, now we in the first episode, we went over the breakdown of language, the language label. I'm thinking about evoking that class again of etymology. So to teach people how to actually read, because here's the thing about etymology, and here's the thing about learning, right? When you start to dig into the papyrus, the papers, when you start digging into the papers and you start wanting to get the understanding of life's journey and to be able to make course correction within our current situations, right? What happens is that when you're reading old texts in modern day semantics, you have read the information incorrect, because what a word meant in its true meaning of the word is not the same of what it means when you read it in the meaning of the word, which is semantics. So that's why it's very important and vital to learn etymology, to study and learn etymology. So when you read old text and you see a word and you go look it up in etymology online, you can't just look up the first word you see, because you have to know the journey in which a word has transformed over, and its meaning has transformed over time. What you want to do is look at what you see right here where it say PIE. That is the root of the word, the Proto-Indo-European root of the word, which means what a word derived from. Where did this word derive from? The Proto-Indo-European root of that word. So that's why when you look up Middle English is like 1500. So that's like foodie, foddy from Old English. Old English, it takes you back to let's say like 1200. So you got 1500, and it goes back like a train. It's like putting the word on the train and putting it in reverse. So fada, food, nourishment, fuel, also figured from Proto-Germanic. So we're going back some more. Faden, source, auto Swedish, fada, Danish. That's a different time period. Gothic, from Germanic. Food, then they say food from Proto-Indo-European root is pat, P-A-T, extended from of root pa, to feed. Pa, pater, father, ma, mater, mother. Pa, to feed. So this is how you look at these things when you're talking about etymology of a word. All right. Now I want to explain this picture. I created this picture through an AI, and I wanted to really I wanted this image to really give a depiction of breaking bread with pain, and to convey the meaning of today's episode. Now it's, this picture is very powerful, and it's a depiction of resilience, and it portrays a group of Black, Negro, colored, African American, Moors individuals, and I said that like that for a reason. Gathered at a dinner table where the food itself symbolized trauma and struggle. Now, as you see the distorted dishes of raw meat, decayed vegetables, and dark oozing liquids, it evokes a discomfort and reflection. Now, it's very dim in there and dark. The dark light, the fractured setting creates an atmosphere of emotional weight, just heaviness. While each person expressions tell a story of strength and endurance amidst the adversity. Now, this is just a pungent exploration of shared pain and perseverance. So that is what this episode is about, the connection between the pain and perseverance and the unity through the breaking bread with pain. All right. And we're going to get into that. Now, the cultural symbolism of food is the communal act of breaking bread as a means of survival, unity, and cultural preservation. Now, let's look at soul food. You had that song, that movie Soul Food, and say, "Come and get your soul food." I love that movie. I remember when we started incorporating as a family during the time when I was married. My sister was I was married at the time. My sister had her family, married, had her family things. The children was younger. And then we, at the time, I was part of the church that my dad was my dad and mom had started, New Life Harvest Ministry. So we was a part of that. And one of the things we did was we incorporate feeding the homeless, and that of that area. So it was like, we picked a particular Sunday. Sometimes it was the Sunday of the third Sunday of the month, where we all cooked food at our different homes, and we brought food and we laid it out, and we made sure we brought the people in to eat. And then then we picked other Sundays for the family after we had service, where we would go to my mom and dad house, and we would all bring our different dishes and things, and we would call that Soul Food Sunday, as we just unite and just enjoyed one another and just had a really good time, just talking in fellowship. And, no matter what was going on, I'm pretty sure everyone has something going on in their life, but no matter what was going on, we made sure to break bread and fellowship with one another. And now we had these dishes. Soul food or origins originated from a time period of enslavement. So we think about, where did this food, now we eat this food without thought of its origin, but let's look at the thought of its origin through trauma, like collard greens, cornbread, and chitlins as products of necessity, and it came by way of creativity. So let's look at that. Now, this is what they call a slave diet, now, which is a source of sustenance, which is nutrition and symbol of shared struggle. Now, now let's look at collard green. Now, collard greens became a staple for Negroes, Black, colored, Moors during slavery. Now, the enslaved people were often provided limited rations that include scraps and surplus greens. Collard greens, which was hardy, inexpensive, and easy to grow, became a vital food source. Now, the preparation, now I know everybody know the word pot liquor. That's where this word is derived from, where the cooks used the pot liquor, which was the juice, which was nutrient rich broth. Like right now, let's think about it. Like the other day, it was cold and I wanted to make some soup. I made like a chickpea butternut squash soup. And I don't eat meat. I don't eat meat. So I get the vegetable broth. And I'm like, man, I could have took a whole bunch of vegetables and made my own broth. But now, with everything's just it's so much going on. It's like everybody just go to the grocery store and just grab everything off the shelf, right? So I go pick up the vegetable broth. But just think about during that time, or during that time of enslavement and trauma, our people took something that was considered a non-substance and created something that we use today of hardiness and enjoyment, and get to really feast off that. And these was flavor, and so basically the nutritional rich broth left for cooking greens, and also as a flavorful base for other dishes as a standalone drink. To make collard greens more palatable and satisfying, they often added smoked meats like ham hocks or pork fat, which others left over as undesirable cuts from plantation owner. Now, this turned a simple green into a flavorful and nutritional dish. So, can you just imagine, something that someone didn't see as being nutrition, or edible, someone else, others they take that and use it for their sustenance, for their survival, and became creative in the process. Let's look at another dish, cornbread. In the South, we say, hey, we cornbread fed. Now, cornbread emerged from the need to create calorie-dense food with minimal resources, and it was widely available to enslaved people, and it was very inexpensive and easy to produce. Unlike wheat flour, cornmeal didn't require yeast, making it quicker to prepare. I know my mother she still will go whip up. She'll go get her cornmeal and go whip up a hot water. It's called hot water cornbread. Yeah, she still whip up her hot water cornbread and add that to her dish. I mean, she whip it up so quick. I was like, darn, you know. Now, enslaved cooks adopted traditional African bread making techniques to create cornbread. Over time, variations such as adding molasses or frying the batter into that's called hoe cakes, Johnny cakes, added versatility to the dish. Cornbread became a reliable companion to greens and stews, soaking up flavors and enhancing meal. Come on now. Now, we all know you ain't eating no collard greens without no cornbread. Now, if you do, I don't know what you want. I don't know what timetable you on. Now, we all know ain't nobody, because you got to take that cornbread and you got to now sop it up, and get it right. So let's, our ancestors are very unique in this process right here. Now let's look at another dish. Now, chitlins. It's a chitlins or chitlins. Now, this is not something I partake in, but we're going to talk about. Chitlins are made from pig intestines and became a staple during slavery when enslaved people were given the leftover parts of animals after the plantation owners had taken the prime cuts. So basically, they would cut up the pig and say, here, you can have the slop. Just eat the slop. So rather than discarding them, they used them out of necessity. Our people found a way through the pain to be able to create a nutrient substance enriched meal. Now, I've been in the midst of someone preparing or cleaning chitlins. I would say it wasn't the best smell. I would say it wasn't the best smell that I want to be around like that. That cleaning and preparing the chitlin, it requires some great skill and effort to do that, and you got to have a good stomach to do that too. Because the odor is something serious, right? Now you feel like that the pig intestine need the colonics. Yeah. Now our ancestors, they cook with these spices, onions, and vinegar to transform those chitlins into a dish with a robust flavor. For those that eat it, enjoy. For me and my stomach, no thank you. Now, the process reflected resilience and resourcefulness, turning a byproduct into a dish that could sustain family. Now, I would say, now I'm going to say this. Today, I have the luxury of not in the choice, like many others have the luxury and the choice that we can say no, thank you to chitlins. But there were our ancestors before us that did not have the option and the choice to be able to say no, thank you, because it was a way of survival. So I just want to make that clear. Just definitely want to make that clear. Now let's look at this. Now let's look at food stamp. Let's get all the way into this. Let's look at food stamp and its creation, right? In 1962, the term food stamp originated as part of the United States federal government efforts to address hunger and poverty. Let's look at that. It refers to a paper voucher or coupon distributed to low income individuals and family, enabling them to purchase food items at authorized retailers. Enable them to purchase food items at authorized retailers. The food stamp program was established under the Agriculture Act. Remember, I said the negative laws, the statute, codes, ordinance, and act. This is what you call a negative law. Tamara, why would you say this is a negative law? Well, because the land produces the substance. Remember, we said before that the land produces. Let's go back to this. Now I do have this up. I'm gonna have to read this again, where it talked about in a different in the Bible where it talked about here it is. The food as provisions from God. Let's talk about that. And the reason why we said let's make this correlation. Let's look at this again. We talked about established under the Agricultural Act of 1961. Let's talk about that. Now, let's go and correlate that till we talked in. We said an act is a statutory, an act is under a statutory law, which is a negative law. And while we're saying it's a negative law, because divinely in your moral compass, it said the divine source said, God says, I give you every seed bearing plant on the face of the whole earth, in every tree that has fruit with seed in it, they will be your source for food. All right. So, meaning that your food source is divinely given. And when your food source is removed through land rights, land grabs, when your source to live of substance is hindered, when it's removed from your ability to naturally be able to sustain it at your own will without having someone else control the flow of the substance that is given divinely, that's why the act is in place. So that's what you call usurpation. That's what's called occupation. That's what you call prisoners of war. We can get into the weeds of that, but we're not going to get into the weeds of that today. I just want you to understand a correlation between what is an act. An act is something that is controlled by someone else because your conditional state as a people has been usurped. It has been interrupted. So when you don't have access to the land that is divinely given, now someone has to control your eating through and your access to food through an act. And what it say? It say it was established under the Agriculture Act of 1961, and its pilot phase began in 1961, expanding nationwide by 1964. These stamps were designed to improve access to nutrition and support farmers by increasing the purchase of surplus agricultural goods. Now, let's look at this. I highlighted this for a reason. In its early form, participants purchased food stamps I remember my mom, my dad was at the VA hospital, and my mom, she in the VA hospital is like 7 miles around the corner from me, right? And my mom was staying at my house, and I had just cooked our breakfast that morning before we went to the VA hospital, and we were just having a conversation, and we was having a conversation about um, the gender war, and we was having a conversation about people, a lot of modern males talking about a time and space that I think is incorrect, where it was like, oh, women put the men out the home for so they can get their food stamps and things of that nature. My mom was like, what? First of all, we had to pay for our food stamps. So when I started researching this, and I started seeing like, whoa, wait a minute. My mom was, she was telling the truth. They didn't give them any food stamps. They had to. Now I'm a 73 baby. So let's look at this. This was 64. Started in 61 and expanded nationwide 64. So I'm a 73 baby. So you're talking about anywhere from 10 to 12 years later. It's that in its early form, participants purchase food stamps. So the government agency were the first ones selling food stamps. So when somebody get popped for selling food, like how did you get popped for selling food stamps when the government agency itself were the first ones selling food stamps? Like, get out of here. When I saw that, I was like mind blown, like, oh my God. And then they say, oh, often, like sometimes we'll just throw you a little bit couple in there for added measures. They'll give you a little additional bonus stamps for free. Hey, how much you got on it? You got $80. Like my mom said, she said if I gave them $80, they gave me probably $100 in stamps. You didn't get it, wasn't that much of a spread, you know. Now the stamps are physically exchanged for eligible foods items, but excluded non-items, food items like alcohol or tobacco. Of course, they're not going to give you something to go get drunk or get high. Over time, the program evolved into the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program. Just want you to think about that. Now look at this. I want to feature our eyes on this. The Black Panther Food Program. This was a grassroots legacy program that with this program, it's like when you see a need. Now, this is the prime example of one of the church mottos of which Dad created: to see the need and to do the deed. To see the need in your community and do the action. Deed mean action. So letting love be the sole motivation for all that you do. Now, this was the Illinois chapter. Now, they served food, breakfast. They served breakfast to the children, as you can see, from 7 a.m. to 9 a.m. before they went to school. They wanted to make sure the children of the community had a very well nutritional meal before they sent them into the classroom to attempt to learn something. But we know we all know now that was a machine for rote learning. That was a machine for rote learning. Let's look at this. Let's look at this program for the Black Panther. The Black Panther Party and the food program, it was a free breakfast for children, for the children. And it was launched in January of 1969. So let's keep in mind, if the food stamps launched in 1961 and was nationwide by 1964, and it said that in the beginning, in the early, they had to buy the food stamps. There was still an impoverishment in the barrier. So there was a food injustice that was still taking place. There was a food injustice that was still taking place, and the people stood up to meet the need of that food injustice for the children. And they did that by way of, of providing that. And it's that in 1969 in Oakland, California, the program aimed to combat food insecurity and malnutrition among Black children, particularly in underserved neighborhoods. It provided free nutritious breakfast before school, recognizing that hunger was a barrier to education and success. Let me read that again. It provided free nutritious breakfast before school, recognizing that hunger was a barrier to education and success. By the mid 1969, the program operating in cities across the U.S., serving thousands of children daily. Now, this was the philosophy of the free breakfast program for the children. It's the program highlighted how systematic issues such as poverty and racial discrimination created disparities in access to food. That's what we're talking about. This is trauma. It embodied the Panthers' belief that addressing basic needs was essential for community empowerment and liberation. Community empowerment and liberation. So please stop talking about, I got my house, I got my car, I got my education. We's free. No, we're not. All right. Now look at how the government responded to that. They said, oh, we can't have the Panthers outdoing us. We're going to create a school breakfast program. So they created a policy. Now, the success and visibility of the free breakfast for children program pressured the U.S. government to expand its own assistance initiative, such as the National School Breakfast Program, which had been organized in 1966, but was underutilized until federal funding increased in 1975. That's almost 9 years underfunded, underutilized. How could feeding children be underutilized? That's not possible. Now let's look at the emotional weight of food and how it embodies emotional trauma, such as poverty, access to healthy options, food deserts in communities, and not forget the access to home ownership and land. Access to home ownership and land. Access to home ownership and land. This is a great picture. I wanted to just show this picture. This picture shows uh, uh, protesters. They're in front of a real estate board of commissioner office, and it say the realtor discriminates. And it say the core Congress of racial equality. So they're both holding a sign saying, hey, this inability to have access to land, it's discrimination, and also continues to create poverty, lack of ability to accumulate wealth, and empowerment for liberation. So it's actually, doing exactly what has been fought for years. This fight has been going on for years. Let's look at this fight. Let's look at the economic disparities in home ownership. Systematic racism, including redlining and discriminatory lending practices, historically barred Blacks from purchasing homes in desirable neighborhoods. Now, I know the last speech that Martin Luther King gave, may he transition, and I know he transitioned in power. The last speech he gave, his last speech that he gave, it wasn't about I have a dream speech. I'm actually going to show this. That I have a dream speech is actually, it was performed in Detroit, not DC. It was performed in Detroit at a march in Detroit. And I have the album. I was digging into the albums. My cousin, she has like 24 crates of old albums and vinyls. I mean, I'm talking about before I was even laid down on this earth plane. And she was like sharing those vinyls, 33s, 45. She was sharing those with me. So I was able to dig out about 150 of them. And I found this album of Martin Luther King's speeches that he gave. It's like a monologue, and it was like they captured like the 2 and 3 minute speeches that he gave, and they were all at the Detroit March. And I was like, wait a minute. I thought history said that I Have a Dream speech was performed in DC. Well, I have evidence. It wasn't. It was originally performed. It was originally spoke in the Detroit March. And in the last speech that Martin Luther King gave before, the Masonic transition that took place, the last speech he gave from that, he was talking about land theft. He was talking about the uh the uh the programs that were put in place that redlined and created barriers for home ownership and interest, the land grab, the Homestead Act, and things like that. Though the Homestead Act that created programs for the Albion to be able to grab the land and get it, jump ahead, grab the land to create the wealth, the wealth of community accumulation, and it created a barrier for the blacks to be tied back to the land which was divinely given. So that was the last speech in which he talked about, right? So now also economic disparities in home ownership, it limited wealth accumulation as home ownership is a primary means of building generational wealth. Now, it actually, it depends on what society we're talking about. It depends on what type of society we're talking about as building wealth. Now, we have to, it depends on how are you defining that, like in what society, what jurisdiction, So when you're looking at it like that, like there's a show on Prime called Landman. The wealth, and it's amazing because I was looking at it last night. The accumulation of the wealth is not in the Federal Reserve note. The accumulation of wealth all comes from source of the land, minerals, oil, fruits, vegetables. That's the accumulation of the wealth is in the land. I hope I made that clear. I hope that was just as clear as the day is Wednesday. I'm not going to say the date because that date is wrong. But Odin's Day, Woden, Day of Communication, Mercury, as above, so below. I hope that just resonated with someone. Take that and run with it. Yeah, take that. Now, the accumulation is in the land. So it's about economic disparity in home ownership. Now, what home ownership are we talking about? Are we talking about restoration, which is post millennia? Are we talking about that type of home ownership with the allodial title? Or are we talking about home ownership through a debt pledge called a mortgage? We have to analyze these things because I'm not saying for people to run out and just go signing a whole bunch of mortgage debt pledge loans. I'm talking about how we look at the restoration of the land ownership. That's what I'm talking about. Now, look at how felony conviction and home ownership. Now, look at the employment challenges. Now, many felons are face difficulties finding stable, well-paying jobs due to employer bias, background checks, or legal restrictions on certain professions. Now, it also limits the income and it can make it challenging to save for any type of down payment or qualify for a mortgage. A mortgage is a debt pledge. Go look up the etymology of that. Now, credit and loan access. You are the credit. But this is what happened to felonies. Anyone who's given a felonious mark. And this is why, this is one of the reasons why Joe Biden did not want Hunter Biden to have a felonious mark, because of the collateral consequences of this society that could really plague havoc on him being able to have these barriers to entry, right? And then people say, oh, Trump is a president. He's a president. He's going to serve as the first president with the felon. Let's keep in mind the archetypes of the Constitution. They were all in a rebellious felonious act in the creation of the Constitution. They were not going to write in a barrier of entry against themselves. So that's why the Constitution is, we talked about the supremacy clause, and it say it's the supreme law of the land, and the treaties and therewith, and anything of the state is notwithstanding. Anything created by the state is notwithstanding. That is the supremacy clause of the Constitution. So in order to hold office, any type of felonious act to be able to hold office is notwithstanding, because that is a felonious act falls up under not only, it's a statutory, it's not in jurisprudence. Let's just put it like that. It's a statutory act. Statute Codes Ordinance Act. You break a statute, you break a code, you break an ordinance, or you break an act, notwithstanding against the Constitution. I hope that made that clear. So stop talking about why he can be in office. You can be in office as a president. You can be in office as a vice president. You can even be a statesperson with the Felonious Act, because those are not coded in the Constitution. I hope that made that self clear. Now, felonies can negatively affect credit scores, and credit scores are under the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. I think people need to start getting more into the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. Now, I'm telling you these things because there's an awakening that must take place to unravel the bind. There's a collective trauma of enslavement that still occurs. And it's supposed to, and I'm telling you this for the empowerment, for our success of empowerment and liberation. All right. So the credit bureaus is under the credit CFPB, Credit Financial Protection Bureau. That is the only agency that exists because it is created by Congress. All right. All the others, which is what do they call Experian, TransUnion, Equifax. Those are like those are companies that just extract information that is under the main hub of the data, of the repository of data that is collected between what you call the number one. The number one is LexisNexis. LexisNexis, Sage Stream, and I know I have the Southern dialect, so just hit rewind if I'm talking too fast or you feel like my draw is too slow. So LexisNexis is a repository that houses the credit data exchange between a consumer and a debtor. You're the creditor. You're the creditor. The other party is the debtor. So it's what they have people thinking is they turn the table and have you thinking it's the reverse. So as the creditor, this information is housed in a repository data that's the main feed through Congress approval called either LexisNexis, SageStream, or Innovus. All right. So go look those up. So you have to start if you want to clean something, if you want to clean up a disagreement between a debtor and what that debtor is saying about you as the creditor, you start there. That's where you clean that information up. You don't send those disputes letters to no Equifax, Experian, or TransUnion. That ain't where it's at. You have to go to these first primary sources that are approved by Congress, such as LexisNexis, SageStream, or Innovus. That's where you start at. All right. Now it's saying, and this is what happened. This information is being reported. It affects a person with a felonious act, statute code, or you know, it so it affect those person, which results in unpaid debts. It actually we're not gonna get into that because they know the debt is already paid, or financial mismanagement. It should just say financial mismanagement. All right. So I should have cleared that up with financial mismanagement. Now, lenders, nobody lent you anything. Um, Nobody lent you anything. May view felons as high risk borrowers. You ain't borrowed anything. Lending to loan deniers or higher interest rates. Now, I can get into the weeds of this. We can break this down at another time and space. And actually, I'm going to do that. I'm going to break that down at another time and space because I think it really needs to be understood. Because a lot of times, it's just simple as just reading the language. But it can be as difficult as not knowing how to interpret the language. You know what I'm saying? And if you don't know what I'm saying, just start off by pulling the Uniform Commercial Codes, which is called a UCC. Start pulling the this is corporate taxation time. Start reading the IRS guidelines. And I said corpse collection time. Corpse, CORPS, collection time. Dead entity. I didn't say living spiritual being collection time. I said corpse collection time, aka corporation. And I'm saying things in this matter for a particular reason. We have these algorithms, we have what they call, they're not my brother. The people say big brother. It's not my brother, not my sister. They have these we have this spy system that usurps the voice of understanding the wisdom on people. That information is trying to be disseminated out to help people come out of this bondage. This is what you call a mental spiritual bondage that's taking place. So a lot of times I'm going to be saying words that you need to go back and do your own research on for your own understanding and unlocking. All right. All right. Yeah, I don't know why my face is red. I don't know why. All right, let's look at this. We're almost there, y'all. We're almost there. Now, also, what has taken place regarding food and its economic disparity, it has also created geographic isolation and food deserts. Now, food deserts are areas where residents lack access to affordable nutritious food, often due to absence of grocery stores within a reasonable distance. It should say in absence to land ownership. That's what it should read. That's what creates the food desert. The food desert is not created because there's not a grocery store. The food desert is created because somebody stole your land. That's why. Shit. It say these areas are typically prevalent in low income and predominant African American, I'm going to say Black, Negro colored neighborhoods. Now, what is the impact on food retail? Grocery stores are less likely to establish themselves in areas with high rental rates, citing perceived instability and lower profit margin. Yeah, they will cite that. A lot don't care who tell it, long as it's being told, because they don't have a problem placing bodegas, liquor stores, um, low quality valued stores within the Black community. And let's keep in mind, those stores profit and are sustained for generations for other racial ethnic groups to profit off the Black community. So it's not ironic. It's ingenious to say, hey, we're not going to put a quality grocery store in your community because we may have low profit margin. Once again, barriers to success. It creates a barrier for nutrition, for success, and liberation. Just say that. Let's say that. Now let's break this cycle. We have to break this cycle by addressing food deserts. It requires a tackling of systemic barriers to home ownership solutions. We have to break this cycle. We must invest in grocery stores in underdeserved areas. There are co-op grocery stores that are coming up where people collectively come together and create the grocery stores that they need for their area. Promoting affordable housing policies to encourage home ownership. Also supporting urban agriculture and local food cooperatives. Support the local farmers. You must support the local farmers. You must support the local farmers. Also, by addressing these interconnected issues, we can create more equitable access to both housing and nutritious food, which leads to success and liberation and breaks the cycle of bondage. All right. And this is how collective resilience operates through community. It operates through our cultural legacy. As we see each of those dishes we talked about, cornbread, collard greens, and chitlins, they symbolize the ingenuity and resilience of the Negroes, colored, blacks, Moors during the enslavement, turning limited and undesirable ingredients into meals that not only nourish the body, but also created several traditions that we continue to operate into the day. Now, over time, these food evolved into cherished staples of soul food celebrated as a testament to our survival, community, and heritage. So support your local soul foods out there in your community, people. Now, this is how we continue to heal through the community healing over meals. We have our family unions. We have our church potlucks. We have Sunday dinners as act of resistance and solidarity. I remember we used to have what you call soul food Sundays. Start back getting with your loved ones. Start back getting with your loved ones and breaking bread with your loved ones and coming up and have think tank sessions to start in the home for success in nutrition, success, and liberation. Let that be the theme and motto for this year. For 2025, nutrition, success, and liberation. And let's give a hand clap to the grassroots legacy of then, and the grassroots legacy has yet to be created, but I know through the vibration of the energy, it will start coming forward, and how the Black Panthers food programs laid the groundwork for modern discussions on food justice, food injustice, emphasizing the connection between the systematic racism, poverty, and food insecurity. Like we said, lack of nutrition leads to lack of success, leads to no liberation. Nutritious food leads to success and leads to liberation. Their work inspired future grassroots that has popped up and never continue to pop up, and demonstrated how community-led initiative could address social injustices, inequities, while empowering marginalized populations. All right, people, we got to get going on this. We have our call to action because we are the people have people power. And how do we have people power? We have people power by advocacy and activism. Support, create community-based organization working towards systematic change. Educate ourselves on policy making and create policy changes. Create PACs, which is a political action committee, such as a 527 tax exempt organization or unincorporated association. You can create a tax exempt organization, or you create an unincorporated association, or you can create an ecclesiastical sole trust association. Your choice, your present. Let's just get busy. That's it. Also, create, submit. At this time, I'm still working, attempting to work with Senator Warnock, who have yet to respond to the email in Osloff. Senator Osloff have yet to respond emails and requests to sit down and speak. So I'm going to make sure I have this timestamp documented because I have the evidence. So when these people come out and start wanting our voice, we're going to do the same thing. We're going to turn our backs on them as well. All right. So this bill, we want to put forth a bill to stop utilization of collateral consequences on Americans. Let our people go, set them free. All right. And also reflect on your own family or community traditions involving meals and how these meals could start creating nutritionist plan for success and liberation. Now, we here at Just Another Messenger, we ask you to tune in every Wednesday at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Like I said, we're not monetizing on YouTube. You can continue to support us via Cash App at $ Just Another Messenger. You can contact us via Gmail at Just Another Messenger podcast at gmail.com. I enjoyed your presence and your attention this evening. I thank you for tuning in. I am glad to be back to help unravel these things as we move forward. And I look forward with being with you again next week at this time and space. Have a great evening.